Good day, everyone. It's me, Riz Il, back on the channel with another reaction, and today we are gonna go further down the wormhole of social issue reactions that I've been wanting to do. Last video that I did with this man in it did quite well. So I'm happy that people are interested in terms of the last topic, and I'm hoping people are interested in terms of this one. And we're gonna go further into it in terms of this one is titled "Black Culture Keeps Black People Down." This is why, and it's by Thomas Sowell. I reacted to him for the first time in my last video in terms of like a previous video in terms of Thomas Sowell, and now he's talking about black culture. The last one was talking about anti-Semitism. This one is talking about black culture, mostly black popular culture. I'm presuming because in the thumbnails it had like a bunch of rappers over there, and I was interested, especially as a rapper, since. Honestly, I've not even me and my friends have talked about it, but I've brought this up with like a couple of my friends here and there, and some of them have like opinions about it, like good opinions, etc., on ways to move forward. Some of them are just like it is what it is. What can we do but play the game? And I think that's destructive, especially in the field that we in, trying to make music. I think people are falling to the whole, especially in my genre, the whole being a rapper thing instead of being a good human thing, guys. That's why I even took like more of a break in terms of music and taking my time because I'm tired of doing like toxic shit. It's very toxic. You feel it in your bones. But without further ado, guys, and by the way, if you want me to react to any other thought-provoking people in terms of like Jordan Peterson, etc., please suggest it in the comment section and I'll get to it. But without further ado, let's listen to what Thomas Sowell says, and I'll be giving my opinions in between. Yeah.
The culture in which they grew up was not the culture in which black kids grew up in America today.
So they had
There's no gangster rap that was pervasively available in Germany.
It's not being black, it's a way of life. Unfortunately, the way of life is being celebrated not only in rap music but among intelligentsia. I hope I said that right. It's a way of life that leads to a lot of very big problems for most people. It's true. I'll further elaborate also in terms of my experience. I I think it's something I can talk about being a rapper and like chasing this whole dream and being in the music industry and like doing and saying the things I say in my music, which also have not been quite positive. So I think I can offer some insight in this too. Hopefully, you guys don't take it any like take my opinions into account and shit. Let's get to it.
I mean, the average of black kid today, I think, is probably better off, certainly materially, than say Ben Carson was when he was growing up.
Ben Carson, the famous
Black
surgeon at Johns Hopkins,
Right, right.
who is immensely accomplished in every way.
Yes.
Right.
I would say that certainly the black kids who are growing up today have a higher material standard of living than I had. The difference was that the schools were good when I came along. They were especially good in New York at that time, hard as that is to believe. But the kids who grew up in that same place where I lived, they will not get that same education. Now that can be blamed on somebody, but it has very little to do with what happened 100 or 200 years ago. And it's true in other countries. I mean, in Nigeria, for example, there's a tribe, the Igbos, who are living in one of the least fertile parts of Nigeria, who were in fact enslaved in centuries past by other tribes and so on. When the British moved in and set up schools, the Igbos went for the schools. By the time Nigeria became independent, the Igbos had climbed above the other groups that had been ahead of them to begin with. But there are all kinds of cross currents of factors, the particular culture, the particular geography. You run through the whole list of them.
You cite in Intellectuals and Race, you cite an observation by the intelligence expert, IQ scientist James Flynn, that just stopped me cold. After the Second World War, you've got large numbers of American troops remaining in Germany. For that matter, there's still several tens of thousands there today. And both black and white American soldiers had children with German women. And Flynn discovered that those children growing up in Germany showed no IQ differences at all. The black kids and the white kids, the same. Quoting Intellectuals and Race, Professor Flynn concluded that the reason was that the offspring of black soldiers in Germany, and now you're quoting Professor Flynn, grew up in a nation with no black subculture, close quote. Which means what? Which means they experienced exactly the same expectations. Is this the...
No, the expectations are external. The culture in which they grew up was not the culture in which black kids grew up in America today.
So they had...
There's no gangster rap that was pervasively available in Germany.
And guys, let me just say, even in terms of me, I might be like an African rapper and stuff, or I might be like an African youth. But this, like, especially the gangster rap, the black popular culture, the black popular music, in terms of like how it is now, especially today, like the whole thing of 21 Savage's viral tweet saying that no one is making love music anymore because women are a bunch of hoes now. When honestly, that's sort of wrong. It's just that the women he's around, they've sort of like positioned and built themselves for a world that expects them to be that way. And not all women are like that. It's just that the women he prefers to be around are obviously like that because he wants them like that. You know what I'm saying? But that popular culture, since honestly, black Americans, no matter if like they're such a small population in terms of like America, they are so freaking influential around the world, just how they are. And they are so like thought provoking, and like they've changed the whole way people even see or do things, that it seeps into all parts of the world, including Africa, where their people actually are. You know, we are their people. You know, wherever you are, Africa is your home, guys, whoever is seeing this. And especially that gangster rap and gangster mentality, it seeps into our slums, into our hoods, into whatever, and kids start acting like Americans and stuff, and start like even following that trend. Granted, it's not as honestly, minus the countries that are going through civil war, but that's not because of gangster rap or gangster culture or whatever. That's because of like internal and external issues within that country. um Countries, like especially these hoods who go through these things, they usually go through these things because they're influenced by things like this. Like the youth sort of like look at that and follow that sort of mindset because they want to be like Americans so bad. You know, they don't even know what Bloods and Crips are, or how that started or whatever, or the history of it, but they follow it because it's cool and it's what's hip. You know what I'm saying? So it does affect over here. Granted, it's not as disastrous as America, due to the fact that we don't have like gun laws where we can all carry guns and shit. Like I have debates with you guys in the comment section where some of you Americans will be like expressing to me how your gun laws work and everything, and how yes, you understand it's very different from like over here where, like I said it before, the only people I knew who had guns growing up were police officers who were friends of the family. The other people that I knew who had guns growing up were kids who were born into houses that were like engaging in gangsterism activities. No one else has a gun. Whereas in America, everyone is sort of like entitled to a gun. Not even sort of. You guys are entitled to a gun. You guys are entitled to weapons of warfare. Let's not split hairs. Literal weapons of warfare and killing people. You guys are entitled to that, and you can get a gun so easy, and that's why it's more disastrous over there than it is over here. Even though the youth over here, I'm telling you right now, I am one of them, we have been influenced to do the same stuff that American kids and American like gangster culture are doing.
So here's what I'm getting. There is something about black subculture in America today that holds African Americans themselves back.
Yes. In fact, I went into this in a previous book, which about black rednecks and white liberals. Because that same
let's talk about two of your books here. Go ahead.
Because that very same subculture held whites in the South back as well. That in the time, this mental testing in the First World War turned up, among other things, the fact that whites from various, 4 or 5 southern states scored lower on the mental test than blacks from 4 or 5 northern states. And so it really was a question of the subculture that was there, which was a handicap to both.
All right. And so whose job is it to say, wrong subculture, folks, you're harming yourselves?
Well, I would think in an ideal world that intellectuals might take on that task. But the world we live in, I've noticed, is not ideal.
All right.
I would disagree with that, not because I wouldn't want that to happen. I just know that me being within it as one, a youth, as one, someone who's engaging in one of those activities, one of the art forms that are within that subculture, which is rap, and like whatever. The people over here are very, like, in terms of our side of things, all around the world, they don't want to listen to intellectuals. I'm sorry to say, me personally, I admire and I listen to them all the time, and I like these conversations. I like having conversations with people all around who are into this, and like I personally, like, I listen, but like for the most part, like even as I said in the beginning of this video, a lot of us, especially youth within this subculture or whatever, we don't want to listen because it's like a us versus them thing. It's like they got good grades, they got good marks, they went to for a 9 to 5 job, they did this and that. They're accepted because they did everything right, and for us, a lot of us had to maybe struggle through school, were ostracized, we were different, we were outside, etc. So when we succeed past that, and we had to deal with maybe the stigma, not to like, this is one of the reasons, had to deal with the stigma that a lot of society pushes. You're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you're nothing. And then you make money regardless, you make insurmountable amounts of money. um it's sort of like your mentality is still has a like a us versus them thing. And you sort of don't want to listen to the people on that side. You'll be courteous, you'll be kind, but I've noticed like a lot of them, a lot of, like, even like as I mentioned, some of my friends, some people I've talked to, etc., who are within this, they don't even want to think the way those people think or engage in conversations with those people in terms of really critically thinking deep about what exactly we are doing and how we are headed forward in terms of our art form, and in terms of whatever we engage in, whether it is even how we engage in fashion, how we engage in whatever even the podcast, whatever we're talking about, and the shenanigans we get into or whatever, in terms of even relationships. We just don't want to take advice from that side, most of us, because it's become a us versus them thing. Like, we're the subculture, we're the rebels, we're the ones who weren't supposed to make it. And because of how we sort of changed the world and changed the game, we now have options within our own space, and they're them and we're different, and we're not going to listen to them because, it's sort of become like that. So intellectuals, like, they'll be talking to no avail. I'm being honest with you guys. Whoever they like who's watching this is an intellectual or whatever, you will talk to no avail. Trust me. I'm one of them, and I'm trying to talk to these niggas. They won't listen. My best friend, yes, he'll listen. A couple others, they'll listen. They'll want to talk about it. They'll even ask questions. We'll have debates. But for the majority, they don't. They don't even want to think about it. There's a reason why even us rappers, like, it's a thing for us rappers. Like, I don't do it. I've never, like, been intoxicated while writing a song, recording a song. But they'll smoke weed and then they'll say it gets me into the mood of things. It gets me into, like, the creative space or whatever. They'll have that excuse. But what it's actually doing is it's tarnishing your body, and it's watering down something that can actually be great, honestly speaking. But they don't want to think too much. They don't want to think too hard. They want the thoughts to die down. They don't want to think too critically and deeply. So they just smoke their brains away and do all these different things. So people like that, with that mentality, they're not going to listen to you. It has to come from people within who they can identify with. And as people within who truly think like this, I think we should stop being silent and stop being so afraid to speak out.
What is to be done? Take a look at President Lyndon Johnson speaking at Howard University in 1965.
But freedom is not enough. You do not wipe away the scars of centuries by saying now, you are free to go where you want and do as you desire and choose the leaders you please. You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bringing up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair.
It's pathetic. It's not a question of, there's no you who has the control to be completely fair or completely unfair. I mean, the circumstances are, so someone once criticized the middle test on grounds that the tests were unfair. And I think it was David Reisman who said, the tests are not unfair. Life is unfair, and the tests are measuring the results. But who has control of life? Who has control of the past? Who has control of the culture that people have in the present, which they've inherited from the past?
So Lyndon Johnson, he's in fact, although good liberal that he was, at least in regard, Lyndon Johnson had a complicated career and changed positions on issues many times. But good liberal though he was at that moment, he was in fact engaging in a breathtaking arrogance.
Yes.
On two counts. One, that white people were the ones who were responsible for where black people stood in the race, that it was up to whites entirely. That blacks, as he described, I'm devastating. Black people are passive, they're acted upon.
That's right, that's right.
And then the second act of arrogance is the supposition that somehow the federal government could fix it.
Yes. It is staggering. But if you wanted to be charitable, you could say, well, he said this in 1965. But if you say, all right, why are people now repeating it in 2013 when we've had nearly half a century of experience to the contrary? And if you look within the black community, those blacks who had escaped what I call the black redneck culture, they've moved on. So, but it's the culture the different parts of the black community had. They were different.
Daniel Patrick Moynihan, in his famous 1965 report entitled The Negro Family, The Case for National Action, close quote. Longish quotation, but it gets to something, I believe. Moynihan, the fundamental problem is that of family structure. The Negro family in the urban ghettos is crumbling. A middle class has managed to save itself, but for vast numbers of the unskilled and poorly educated, the fabric of conventional social relationships has all but disintegrated. So long as this situation persists, the cycle of poverty and disadvantage will continue to repeat itself. Close quote. When Moynihan wrote those words, the illegitimacy rate among African Americans was 25%. Today, the illegitimacy rate among white Americans is 36%. Among Hispanics, more than 50%. And among African Americans, more than 70%.
Yeah.
I don't know the illegitimacy rate in Africa, but like for black I even met an American over here, guys. I sold him something from our business over here that we have. He told me like you guys are like maybe like 8% of the population or something like that, but for y'all to be such a small percentage, whichever black American is watching this, and to have such like issues in terms of like illegitimacy, in terms of crime or whatever, holding that level of a statistic like at the highest points, while the majority of people who have more numbers to fuck up, like the populations and the races that have more numbers to fuck up are not fucking up as bad as the one of the smallest like populations in America. I'm not trying to offend anyone. Like I'm literally like calling a spade, and for that to be like the current state right now is crazy. I don't know about Africa. I need to do research after this, but for that to be the current state of Americans in terms of American culture and everything y'all are going through is freaking insane. That is nuts, guys. That is nuts. Hey,
Aside from throwing up your hands in despair, what is to be done?
The first thing to be done is to understand that this was a result of policies begun in the 1960s. This is not a legacy of what happened 100 years before the 1960s.
The breakdown of the black family is not a legacy of slavery.
No, if you the classic study of this goes all the way back to the era of slavery, and they find that most black kids, even under slavery, had lived with two parents, and that was true all the way up until the 1960s. And so, if you really want to find out what's changed, it has changed since the 1960s. And the fact that whites now have a higher rate of illegitimacy than blacks had when Moynihan wrote suggests that this is something that spreads out. But if you look at something else, if you look at those blacks, look at black husband-wife families, the poverty rate among such families has been in single digits every year since 1994. And so if you look at the external causes, why the husband and wife families and the welfare single mom families all are facing the same society and objective things, but the results are radically different because the cultures and values are different.
So you would roll back welfare. I guess that's the principal policy. So what would Tom Sowell do? One, you'd eliminate welfare, you'd reform welfare. What would you do?
Roll it back.
All right. And what about affirmative action?
Eliminate it.
Just gone.
Yeah.
Colorblind
Yeah.
policy completely. All right. What prospect for that do you see?
None.
No black leader of any standing. I'm talking about a political leader as opposed to an intellectual such as yourself. You've got, there's you, there's Walter Williams. Do you get the sense that there's a growing generation, a rising generation of African American intellectuals who say, enough of this, I'm with Tom Sowell?
Well, I don't know if they'll go that far. No point.
That would be asking a lot.
I will say this, guys. I don't know much about like America and in terms of affirmative action and welfare and like the different laws that have been put in place to help the minorities that have been previously abused, ostracized from society, and impoverished by the big wigs and like the ruling class and the ruling race of America. But I will say, like living in South Africa most of my life and growing up there, a lot of like those laws that they put in place in terms of like BEE and all of that to put black people first over other races and everything, and make it easier for black people. Like BEE works where whatever job or whatever opportunities are available in the country, black people get it first, and then as you go down the races, other people get it like even less than black people. So it's black people first, then maybe Indians, then maybe mixed race people, and then last but not least, go down every other minority, and then race, and then last but not least, whites are at the bottom. Whites get even less of an opportunity than other races at the top, whatever. And the reason why I say, despite everything that we've gone through, it doesn't work is because people still kick and complain and make excuses, and there's still high levels of corruption and nonsense that happens within these structures. Like one of the problems that we faced, especially as foreigners, was xenophobia in South Africa, where they were one of the main reasons they always gave was, we are taking their jobs, we're taking advantage of them. But in actuality, my experience as a foreigner in South Africa was, you couldn't get a job for shit. Some of us had to illegally pay like corrupt officials within the country for paperwork in order to get like permanent residence, to get green cards, to stay. You can't even get it in the conventional sense to better your life. If you're not at a certain level in terms of maybe being a lawyer or whatever, they're always going to reject you. So what people have to do is go through all these different like loopholes, and even then it's still not enough, because you still got to build up and get to your work permits, still got to, and the bills are so high that it's nearly impossible for black foreigners especially to take your job away from you in terms of like a formal job. Informal jobs, like maybe like cutting the grass or doing like lower level work and all of that, yes, we will, mostly because the current like South Africans or whatever citizens don't want to do those jobs, and foreigners are desperate for that work, but in terms of the formal jobs, the proper jobs that are available, foreigners just don't get it in South Africa. It is such a struggle. I moved out of South Africa because after college, after I got my degree, I couldn't afford to pay someone to help me get a work permit to stay in South Africa. And I've been in South Africa all my life, and I had to move back to my country before it was too late. And I don't know my country, and it's worse off in terms of even getting a job. It's so much harder. But I had to. But the excuse was always they stealing our jobs. The white man did this, so that's why we're currently suffering. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in actuality, it's a whole lot of fuckery and a whole lot of nonsense and a whole lot of excuses that have been given to the citizens, especially the black citizens of South Africa, that this is the reason why you are currently suffering. When honestly, it's not the reason; it's a mentality.
There's no point being reckless. But I think there are people like Shelby Steele and many others, Larry Elder. You can run through a long list, and there are more such people now than there were, say, in the 1970s. But in terms of political leaders, all the incentives politically are for black leaders to blame all problems in the black community on the larger society. And that enables them to take on the role of being the defender of the black community against enemies, which in turn creates the situation in which many blacks don't feel that anything that they do is going to help themselves unless it's done politically as a group. That there's no point. I mean, why would you, if you believe what they say, why would you want to knock yourself out in school knowing that the man is not going to let you get anywhere? Well, one of the most pathetic things I heard in recent years was a young black man saying that, at one point he thought he would join the Air Force and become a pilot. And then he says he realized that the white man is not going to let a black man become a pilot. And he was saying this decades after the Tennessee Airmen had established their reputation in combat in Europe. But the hopelessness is one of the big products of the race industry. That you have no chance. I remember giving a talk at Marquette, and at the end of the talk, among the questions that was asked, a young black man got up and he said, "Even though I am graduating from Marquette University, what hope is there for me?" And having gone through college when I was in the 50s, I don't remember any blacks saying that in the 1950s, when there was a lot more obstacles to overcome than there were when this guy is graduating from Marquette. But you have to produce that kind of feeling in order to serve the interests of those in the race industry.
Final question then. Maybe we can think in terms of that young man at Marquette. Or let's put it this way. Somewhere watching this interview, there's a young Thomas Sowell. There's an African American who's smart and wants to do something with his life. It seems to me we've already got one piece of advice you'd offer to him is stay away from the races industry. Stay away from the race hustlers. What advice would you give a young Thomas Sowell? How do you make something of yourself as an African American in America today?
The way anybody else would. You equip yourself with skills that people are willing to pay for.
Shit, that's it. That's it. Hey guys, he's right. He's right. Because all over, especially Africa, guys, like the mentality is deep within that, if you see like white skin, automatically the opportunity has come and you can rest on your laurels. And that's all I have to say about that. I've spoken about that in length in terms of previous reactions. I don't even remember, but yeah. It's more of like, that race is a sign of opportunity instead of life is life. Roll up your sleeves and get after it. So, hey guys, leave your comments below and we can discuss it. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the post notifications. You guys have a blessed day. Alright? Take care.